All right, so I want to talk about what does it mean to believe in Jesus. I think that this is something that it's one of those phrases that Christians tend to use. We talk about having belief or being having faith, and that's the only thing that matters. That's the most important thing that matters, and I agree with that. I think that we're saved by grace through faith, and not of works and all of those things. So this isn't like go into some place of like you need belief and faith, but you also need some other component. Um, it's more about what that term actually means, belief, and to have belief, to have faith. Um, because I think that we have a tendency to use phrases that not only do not a lot of people outside the church actually know what they mean, a lot of people inside the church don't know what they mean either. Um, a good example of that is when I was growing up, we used to talk about, or people would talk about, you just gotta love on people, you just gotta love on them, which is a very weird phrase to hear if you don't know what it means. To be loved on sounds kind of awkward and odd to people who have no point of reference for what it means, which just means that you don't just means that you make people feel welcomed and cared about, even without necessarily knowing who they are, that you're just welcoming kind of to everybody was what the phrase meant. That's not exactly how people took it. We do a similar thing, I think, with faith. And it doesn't help that we as Christians have this bad habit of letting our opponents, atheists or secularists, people in other religions, define our terms for us. People will say that faith is belief without evidence, and that's not only not what the Bible describes faith as. That's just literally not what the word means. But you'll see atheists use it that way, and then Christians just let them, and then just try to say, well, we don't have to have evidence or things like that, and that's r- ridiculous. You're letting your opponent define your terms. The moment you've done that, especially when they misdefine them, you've immediately lost any discussion or argumentation that you might have had with them, because they're like, okay, well, then you agree with me that it's all just made up off the top of your head. That's what you mean when you say you have faith, is you don't care about truth, you don't care about reality. But I think that even that misses the point, because I don't think that belief is the right term for what is foundational to Christianity. C.S. Lewis talked about mere Christianity. He has a whole book about it. It's really good if you've never read it. But fundamentally, what it breaks down to is that there's essentially a core set of beliefs for Christians, a core set of things that we accept as true that define kind of what sets Christians apart from other religions. And ultimately, it kind of breaks down to three things. That's belief in the death, the resurrection, and the deity of Jesus Christ. It's accepting those as a fact of reality. Um, the death is necessary for the resurrection. The resurrection affirms the deity, and those are the things that you have to affirm as belief, as being like foundational for Christianity, and that anything beyond that is doctrinal, and you can have discussions about, sometimes even heated discussions about. But his contention was largely that things like denominational differences, like whether you want to be Anglican or Methodist or even Roman Catholic or any of those things, if you can affirm those three things, then you have that kind of mere Christianity, that kind of core foundational doctrine in place. And while I think that that's true, like I said before, we are saved just by faith. There's no works we have to do. There's no like, oh, that person didn't tithe, that means they're not a Christian. It's no, that's ridiculous. Or, oh, that person didn't get baptized in the right way, so they're not a Christian. No, none of those extra things get you into heaven, define you as a Christian. They might define the type of Christian that you are, or where you are in your walk with God, how far along you are, whether you're what some people or in the Bible might describe as a baby Christian, or Fox's Book of Martyrs uses the term weak Christians for people who, when faced with a life or death, kind of denounce Christianity or die. In Fox's Book of Martyrs, if you read it, there are a couple places where one person will denounce their faith, and they'll be called. The book just calls them a weak Christian. It doesn't say they're not a Christian, and especially because several times in the Book of Martyrs, another person will stand firm in their faith. They'll be martyred, and then the person who had previously said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to believe this, if it's going to cost me my life," will then step up and put their life on the line again afterwards, sometimes doing amazing things, sometimes being martyred right afterwards. So they'll go from, I'm not willing to be martyred for my faith, someone else is, and then they're like, oh man, I that was cowardice of me, I should have stood up too, if that other person was braver than I was, kind of thing. Um, and I don't want to get onto a whole martyrdom thing. That might be a video for a whole separate video one day about what that means and how that's a gift, and not everybody actually has that spiritual gift, because we don't all have the same spiritual gifts, and the Bible does call martyrdom one of them. Um, which is one of the reasons Fox says he just uses the term weak Christians and doesn't say not Christians. But the idea that there's anything else that you have to attach to yourself in order to be considered a Christian is not what this video is about, and it's not what anyone should believe if they are truly a Christian. But let's talk about belief, because I've even used the term because it's so ingrained in us that even now in this video where I'm talking about what it is and how I don't know that it's the best term for us to use, kind of in the modern era, especially for what it actually means, what it actually represents. And so I kind of want to pivot a little bit to belief as we consider it, as the term is used kind of in the modern vernacular, is insufficient for what belief in the scripture or faith in the scripture is actually kind of rooted in and pushing us towards. So to give kind of a example, so in the scriptures, for example, it says that the demons know, for example, that Jesus is God, and it causes them to shudder, that they know. So it goes even beyond belief, right? They know definitively that Jesus is Lord and Jesus is King, and it causes them fear, right? And so if belief is accepting something as true, if that's all it is, then you can't get much more of I accept this as true than to know definitively it is true because you were there and you witnessed it as it happened and saw it. Like, so it's belief in some ways is immaterial, right? Jesus even says in the Sermon on the Mount, he says that at the end of things that there will be people who will come to him and they will say, Lord, Lord, did we not do these miracles in your name? Did we not even cast out demons in your name? And Jesus will say to them, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you. Jesus will say to them, I never knew you. They clearly believed Jesus was God in the sermon that he's giving. He lists these people who will call him Lord, Lord. They will state that they believe he is Lord, that they believe he is King and God, and they will do these things even in his name. And then he will tell them, I never knew you. And I think that is a crux of the matter. You'll see it on church marquees a lot, and on like pithy kind of uh, ways that people talk about things, that the most important question you could ever answer is who you say Jesus is. And it kind of is rooted in when Jesus asks Peter, he says, who do you say I am? After he kind of says, what do different people say about the Son of Man? What do different people say about him? And then at the end of it, he says, and who do you, Peter, say I am? And so there are people in the church who will say, that's the most important question you can answer, is who do you say Jesus is? Well, according to Jesus, the most important question is not who you say he is, it's who he says you are. Does he say he knows you? Because that belief in him is not all that matters, the way that we think of belief, the way that we think of the term. Because believing something is accepting it as true. That's fundamentally all that it means. And so to kind of tie it into kind of a modern context, not to get political in this video, but Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Your belief in that is immaterial. He is. He won the election. He was sworn in. Even if you think the election was fraudulent, he was sworn in. He's in the office. He is the president. Previous to him, Joe Biden was the president of the United States, regardless of belief. It didn't, regardless, irregardless isn't a word, but I use it because it's funny. Regardless of your belief, right? Like, whether you love him or hate him, Trump or Biden, when they were president. It That's just how it was. That was the fact of reality for that period of time. Uh, King Charles is King of England right now, regardless of what you think about English monarchy and rules. He is the king. Period. Your belief is immaterial. And in the same way, Jesus is King. Jesus is the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. He is God. He is a member of the Godhead, the Trinity. He is the Son of Man. He is all of those things that he is, regardless of your belief. So to say that your belief in that is what gets you into heaven, is what makes you a Christian, is an odd thing to say when, again, in the modern context, what we mean when we say belief is just, oh, it's true. I accept it as true. It That is immaterial. It is a true statement. What belief, and this is kind of what I'm getting at, because what belief, what faith really kind of core foundation means is that you don't just accept the reality, you submit to it. You don't just say, oh, yes, King Charles is King of England. If you're an English citizen, your belief in his being king is immaterial. Loyalty is what matters, is what's material. Now, we don't need to have blind loyalty in humans because humans are flawed, and we don't even need to have blind loyalty in God. He has proven his faithfulness again and again, so that we can have faith in him, so that we can have loyalty in him. We even the term faith is not just a belief in, it's a loyalty to the thing. This is why the term, like a faithful spouse, right? That they are loyal to the oaths they've made to you. They are loyal to you. That when there's a contention that comes up with an outside force, your loyalty is to the one you swore the oath to. Your loyalty is to your king or your president, your nation. You are a faithful citizen. You are a faithful subject, in that if an outside power invades, you are willing to defend your nation, uh, whether that's with arms or through some other means, that you will exhibit faith. You will do the things that your king commands because you are a loyal subject, because Christ is a king. We get caught up in the modern era, even in places like England, where there technically is a monarchy. We very much love democracy and individual freedom and all those things. That is not God's system. God is a monarch. He is king. He has set up a kingdom of heaven that, and on earth as it is in heaven, his kingdom will reign. When he set up his own theocratic government in the nation state of Israel during the Bronze Age, it was a monarchy. Actually, it was a theocracy before that. Where it's funny when you read the book of Judges, and it uses the term, it says that there was no king in Israel. Everyone just did what they thought was right in their own eyes. The reason that is, it's an accusation against the Israelites of the time, because it says there was no king in Israel. But if you read the books before that, if you read Joshua and you read the Exodus and all of those books, Israel did have a king, and it was God. But because they could not see God, and because God operated through the use of judges to come in times of when they did need a central person to lead them, the people said, well, we don't have a king then. We can do whatever we want. Because from the book of Joshua to the book of Judges, they forgot the promise they made that we will do what God says because he is our king. So it goes from them declaring, God is our king, we will do whatever he says, we will follow all of his rules. And Joshua says, no, you won't. You better not, don't even make the promise because you're not going to fulfill it. And they say, oh, we will fulfill it. We're making the promises. And he says, okay, then you're going to have to live up to it. The very next book, Judges, says there was no king in Israel, so they did whatever they wanted. So that is the difference between just kind of this abstract belief and actual faith, actual fidelity, actual loyalty. And I think that that's the term that we should start using more. Not to say that like we got to go out and retranslate all the Bibles and replace belief or faith with loyalty. I just think that it just needs to be something that we understand when we see the term, that is what it means. It means loyalty. It means that when God speaks, whether in the scriptures or through other believers or whatever mechanism he uses to speak to you, that you listen and then you follow through. That when he gives a clear instruction, you follow it because you are a loyal subject to the King of the universe. Because again, belief is largely immaterial. Jesus is king. His death on the cross, his resurrection affirmed his place as king, as redeemer, as all of the things that he is, regardless of your belief. The Bible even talks about how every person has a conscience, and so we know that there is a God, but we suppress the truth in unrighteousness. But we know it. It's not about belief in the sense that people often use it as like, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. Because you'll even see this, like missionaries, people who do like street evangelism or things like that. It's less so missionaries in other countries because they're objectively dealing with other people who hold other loyalties, right? Because this is one of the funny things. It's a uniquely Christian concept to say that you have to believe in something anyway. Like the Muslim doesn't believe in Islam. Islam is submission. He submits to it, right? The Hindu doesn't necessarily believe in Hinduism. They just submit to it as truth because it's the caste system, which though the governmentally it's kind of they've outlawed that, but it's still religiously and culturally part of Indian culture. That it's a order of hierarchies and submission. It's a submission. Every other religion base essentially understands this, that when you believe that religion, you are submitting to it. So a lot of times missionaries who go to other countries, they kind of understand this a little bit better. But people who do street evangelism in like America or in Europe or in a couple of other places, they'll sometimes walk up to strangers. This is sometimes how some people do street evangelism. Sometimes they'll stand on corners with like bullhorns or whatever. There's different ways to do it. And they'll go up to the person and they'll say, "Do you believe in Jesus?" Sometimes they'll say, "Have you accepted Jesus in your heart?" Which is one of those phrases that if you don't know what the person's asking, it kind of is impossible to answer. What does it mean to accept Jesus in your heart? Which is another reason that I think we should rephrase things. We should understand what we're actually saying, what the core kind of foundational statement is about, what the implications of it are, and then use terminology that means that. And accepting Jesus in your heart is essentially swearing loyalty to him. Is essentially saying yes, you are my king, true, and now I am going to be loyal to you. Because, for example, to tie it back into kind of more into the modern kind of era, if I say that yes, Donald Trump is president, and then I say and I despise him and everything about him, and I'm going to work against him, right? You see that a lot of people on the left, this is how they operate. Anything Donald Trump could come out and say, that tomorrow is free snow cone day, the government's going to give free snow cones to everybody, and they would say, well, that's just he's just trying to make everybody fat, and and snow cones are evil and they're a tool of fascism. And similarly, there's some of this on the other way too, right? That if Kamala Harris had won and she had come out and made a similar declaration, you would have had people on the right saying, "Oh, he's trying to poison everybody with those chemicals they put in snow cones." And it's just they assume the worst, and there's nothing that the person can do for them to be loyal to them. But it doesn't change the fact that that person is the president. But if you do have loyalty to the office or to the nation, then, for example, going to the situation of if we ended up in a kind of larger war situation, America went to war, and we required a draft. If you are loyal to your nation, you wouldn't, for example, be a draft dodger. Now, that's not to put a moral compass because, again, your nation does not deserve blind loyalty. Even God, I don't think, requires or even wants blind loyalty. That God has shown that he is faithful, and so we can have faith in him, we can give him our loyalty. And I think that nations should do the same, that your government should be worthy of being loyal to. um, but that's not always the case. So I don't want to get too much into like you have duties and privileges and rights and all these things. That's again another that will be a more political video. But just in the context of faith, I think that parallel, that kind of uh, what's what I'm looking for here, that metaphor, I guess, parable might be a good word. Jesus uses parables. That kind of parable of your loyalty to your nation, right, means that if your nation goes to war, you go to defend it. Your loyalty to your nation means that you pay your properly due taxes. And since we live in a democracy, you would think that it would actually make loyalty easier because we have a say ostensibly in the laws and the taxes and all these other things, and whether or not we go to war and all that stuff. That you would think. So you would think, kind of intellectually, that democracies should instill more loyalty in people. But it's really interesting that the reverse tends to happen when you look at it historically. That democracies tend to collapse very quickly because people do not have loyalty to the state. They become very individualistic. They'll have more loyalty to their community or their city, uh, things like that. That a democracy democratizing things, kind of spreading things out, actually decreases loyalty to the state, and they end up kind of collapsing and falling to exterior forces, or an internal force kind of rises up and instills something like a monarchy again, or a totalitarian regime that uh, so it's very interesting that the more individualistic people become, the less loyal they become, and that's not just to the state, that's to God. The more we have kind of there's an expression that I like to use. The Protestants protested a little too much. They broke away from Catholicism, and I think for good reason. One of the big ones, for example, was buying indulgences, right? That the Catholic Church had instituted a system of being able to kind of pay your way out of purgatory, even preemptively. That you could give the church money, and they would give you like a piece of paper that says, "Oh, this is taking so much time off of any time you would need to spend in purgatory for sins you hadn't already confessed through accident, or if you died before confession, that this can help you speed along your purgatory time." And you could even buy it for other people. So there were people who were buying indulgences for people who were dead, who were not in purgatory. Like even if you accept the Catholic view of purgatory, uh, it was possible, for example, to buy indulgences in the name of saints, who, like, anyone, you could buy indulgences for anyone. It was basically just a way to get a piece of paper from the church. But indulgences was one of the big reasons for the Protestant movement kind of starting. But it wasn't the only one. Obviously, if you read Martin Luther's list of grievances, a lot of them related to the way the church was handling money, but there were several others as well. Not just handling money as in they were misspending it, but in the way that they were collecting it and getting people to give them money for frivolous things, selling of relics. There was an expression that there were enough, I think, was it finger bones? I think it was that there were enough finger bones of St. John to make like four of him. Just finger bones, something like that. But that was an example of the time. And so they protested against these things, again, that I think were right to protest against. But I do think that they kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater for some things, and one of those things was kind of the centralized authority that you are able to swear fealty to and loyalty to, in a sense. Um, I do think that the denominational split that Protestantism kind of instituted has not necessarily been the best, because in the same way that as governments democratize, people become individualistic and they kind of lose the loyalty to the higher thing. That the same way as churches have democratized and split, you have churches that split over whether they're going to have a piano or an organ play music for the music on Sunday, whether they should even have music on Sundays. They split over whether they should meet on Sundays or Saturdays. So they begin to split and fracture over all of these things, and it's why why are you dividing up the body over these things? Our loyalty is not to the color of the carpet, is the kind of classic over the top example of, one group wants it blue, one group wants red carpet, and so they actually split and start two churches, one with blue carpet, one with red. Um, that's kind of the meme joke, extreme scenario. But if our loyalty is to God, then why does the color of the carpet matter? Which is one of the things that C.S. Lewis tries to get to in Mere Christianity. But I think the reason that kind of fails to resonate enough to be impactful is because it lacks a fourth category of loyalty, first and foremost to God, first and foremost to Christ, to his commands and his way of doing things. And it just strikes me as ironic, I guess, that the the democratization of Christianity, you have churches that are run by democracy, that have a group of elders or a group of deacons, and it's as if they've never even read the Bible, where it lays out how to structure your church, and nowhere in that does it say that any person in the church has a vote on anything. The church is meant to be run by an elder who is the head of the church in the name of Christ, and not a group of elders, not a team of elders, not even him and his wife are both elders. It is an elder, a bishop or pastor. We misuse these terms, and then we wonder why the church is in such confusion, because we're not even reading the requirements of elders and then actually implementing them. That we don't know the difference between a deacon and an elder. You have churches that are run by the deacons. Scripturally, the deacon, anyone who works at the church that is not an elder is a deacon, like definitionally. If you're an elder, if you're in the secretary of the church is a deacon. The what we would call a youth pastor at your church should be called a deacon, because the deacon is anyone who works vocationally for the church, who serves the church, who works for the church, that is not the elder. So you have the elder, and then everyone else, if they work there, is a deacon, and then everyone else is just the parishioners, the members, the body. But you're only supposed to have one elder. But we have churches that are run by teams of elders, groups of elders. That's not the way that the church is supposed to operate. And then we wonder why there's such confusion in the church when we don't even in your local church. And this isn't even going to get into in households of the husband should be head of the household. We don't even do that. But then the next step above that is the church, and we don't even allow the church to have a singular leader. Now this can go awry, right? As I said, we should never swear blind loyalty to a person. Our loyalty, which again isn't even needed to be blind, but our ultimate loyalty, whether we understand what he's doing or not, whether we agree with what he's doing or not, because he has access to all information, is God. He is the one we are loyal to, and he has laid out commands. And one of those commands is the hierarchical structure of his church. His church. It's not our church. It's his church. And part of that is an elder. It is God the Father and Jesus Christ who willingly submits, because in the Godhead they're equal, but he willingly submits to God. So full equality with God, but he's still God the Father, but he still submits to him. Beneath Christ is the elder. He, and it must be a he, fully submits to Christ. Period. And then under him, the rest of the body. And some people may be deacons, some people there are other titles as well, but fundamentally, that's the structure. Now, who does the he submit to? He submits to Christ. Who do you submit to? If you are not the elder, you submit to him. And if he is clearly not doing things in line with God, then you can kind of suss out, okay, I need to put myself under the authority of an elder that is following God, that I do respect and agree with, or whatever your reasons for leaving are. So I'm not saying that once you're in a church, you have to fully submit to the authority of that pastor, no matter what. That's not what I'm saying at all. That would be beyond the pale here. That if they are doing things that are clearly against the scriptures, if they have violated the tenets, for example, if you're in a church and your elder, if you look at the book of Timothy, where Paul lays out the requirements for elders, and there's some other places where he does it too, so you kind of need that holistic view, because that's not the full list of like these are the only requirements. It's just these are the primary ones. And if your elder is falling short of that, then you should either talk to them about it, or if you don't feel that you have that capacity, that's not something that you have the capacity to do, to really talk that out with them, then you can look for another church that has an elder that you do. The problem is in Western churches, in America especially, with our evangelical kind of structure of churches, you're going to be looking for a long time for a church that has a pastor who actually meets the qualifications. A lot of pastors do not, and that's going to be a whole other video for a whole other time about what are the qualifications, and do any modern kind of pastors or elders live up to them, because I think that's a hard ask. The Bible says, let not many of you become teachers. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who've become teachers and elders and things like that probably shouldn't have been. Not even probably, that literally would be disqualified if we actually took Timothy seriously. But I want to tie all that back to faith, belief. What does it mean? And I think that it roots down into this: loyalty to God, loyalty to his word, his scripture, what's been revealed to us, what he has to say. Jesus says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? That your word, your belief, is immaterial if you don't back it up with loyalty. And again, this is not to say that your salvation is contingent on doing things, because the king can give an order and you might fail at following through on that order, or you might not receive that order, or you might not understand that order, and so you're unable to complete it. So your salvation is not contingent upon executing the loyalty, it is contingent upon having the loyalty. right? That if you live in a monarchy, if you were to live in a monarchy and the king were to send an order that you need to do this thing, you need to help build this wall, but that order gets lost. Either it gets intercepted, like let's assume maybe you're at war and it gets intercepted, or you get the order, but it's you can't really understand it. Maybe it's written in a language, for example, there were times in English history where the court language of the English crown was French, and the people of England didn't speak French. So if an order got sent out in French, and the people would have no idea what it said, they would need it to be translated either by the local noble or by the priest, and a lot of people couldn't read anyway. So if you received a written letter from the king and you were illiterate, like, okay, you can't follow through necessarily on that loyalty very well, but that doesn't mean you don't have it. And so your salvation isn't contingent upon the execution of your loyalty. It's contingent upon having the loyalty, that when God gives a command, I will follow through with everything I have. If he commands me to do something, I will do it. And if I fail, then I fail. If I get to heaven and God's like, oh man, I asked you to do this thing, and I'm like, I had no idea that was what you wanted me to do. But if I had known, I would have done it. Like that. So the the having of the loyalty. And so I think that's what it means when it says that faith is sufficient. It's loyalty is sufficient. It's not execution of loyalty. It's not how good you are at being loyal. It's just, were you loyal in your heart? This is why it says, this is why the phrasing, have you accepted Jesus into your heart? It's like, no, are you in your heart loyal to God? Because what does Christ say? With all of your heart, all of your mind, all of your soul, all of your body, all of that, you love the Lord your God, right? You submit yourself to him loyally with everything you have. And maybe you don't have a lot. Maybe you're weak and you're poor and you're all of these things. But if you bring all of that to him, it's like the widow who gives the 2 coins, gave more than the guy who gave way more than that because he had more than that. If you give all you have, then it doesn't matter how much ultimately it was. It doesn't matter how well you executed, as long as you gave it all, as long as you tried. It's kind of like when a parent has a kid who's like in sports or something, and then the kid will lose like a game, like they're playing basketball and they lose, and then the parent will ask them, well, did you try your best? And the kid's like, yeah, I tried my best. And it's like, okay, well then I'm proud of you. You tried your best, you did everything you could. The other team was just better. Now, luckily, with our God, we are ultimately going to win. So it's not our win loss ratio is not going to be dependent on our skill, but your ability to be useful in the fight, so to speak, does hinge a little bit on your skill. But your usefulness isn't the vector that determines your salvation. It's your willingness. So all of everything I've said comes down to this: that willingness, that loyalty. The belief in Christ is not saying, yeah, Christ is King, Jesus is Lord. Yeah, it's not that, because that doesn't matter. And again, it's not even doing things. You can cast out demons. You can perform miracles. You can heal people. You could feed 5,000 people like Jesus did. And if you don't have that loyalty, if you weren't doing it because Jesus told you to do it, if you weren't doing it out of loyalty to him, then it's meaningless. In fact, it's a work of inequity, because you did it for yourself. You did it so that people would notice you. Um, so it's not about what you do; it's about why you're doing it. It's about, is it from a point of loyalty, and are you doing it because the King has ordered you to do it? And there are some standing orders that we have, and that might be a whole nother video for another time, because this one's already gone over 30 minutes. But loyalty, and I think we need to start using that. Or not do you believe in Christ? Because that's easy. That's you can intellectually come to a place where you say, yes, there's a God, and of all the religions, seems like Christianity has kind of the most evidence, and kind of standing and all of these things, and the most kind of principles I agree with. And so you can kind of come to an intellectual place of, yeah, I can believe in Jesus, yeah, I can believe that. But that's not loyalty. That's not faith. That's not fidelity. That's uh, as the Marines say, right? Semper Fi, right? Always faithful, right? I'm not a Marine. No, because I have a lot of friends that were. So, but that, they say that, what is it they say? Once a Marine, always a Marine, right? That it's always faithful. Um, it's kind of the way they think about it, and that's kind of how we should be as the church. It's always faithful, always loyal, always willing to step up and be there, whatever the order, whatever the command, we will follow through. And as long as it's from God, right? And if you are saying that you're of God, if you're an elder and you're giving people commands, you better make sure your commands line up with God. Because if people follow your commands and you lead them into perdition, that's on your head. The Bible makes that very clear. But so all of that to say that loyalty to God, belief in Jesus is not sufficient in the way that we think of belief, which is just accepting it as a reality. Belief in Jesus is sufficient because it means loyalty to Christ. Christ died and rose again. He is God, He is King, and I submit to Him, His authority, His will, because I am a loyal subject of the true and living King. And I will do whatever He says. I'll get it wrong. I might not always understand when an order is given, and I might execute it poorly, but I will always, when He gives an order, do my utmost to follow it. And so you may cast out demons by the power of demons because you're doing it for yourself. And C.S. Lewis and the Screw Tape Letters has the two demons talking, and one of the principles is that like the demons are willing to sacrifice each other. They're willing to damage their own house. So they're willing to make people appear to be Christians and doing the right thing uh, if it furthers their goal in the long run of destroying that person. So you may do amazing things. Judas performed miracles by all accounts in the scriptures. When they got sent out in pairs, Judas was one of them, and they all came back, and all of them said, "We did all these things." So Judas himself, which the Sermon on the Mount likely included him, right? Jesus says, "Depart from me, I never knew you." That would have been Judas. Judas departs from Jesus because he never knew him. Jesus never knew him, which is an interesting thing to think about. How does Jesus not know? But it's one of those things that it's not a contradiction. It's just a turn of phrase, um, because Jesus did know them, and he knew that they weren't really for him. And I want Jesus to say to me, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good and loyal servant." So I think that we should start to think of it in that term, loyalty. If you're doing mission work, if you're doing street evangelism, don't ask people if they believe in Jesus. That's an easy thing to say yes to. Say, are you loyal to Christ? Have you given your loyalty to God? I think that would be a better metric, because I think if you phrase it like that, even some people who go to church, even some people who would call themselves Christians, are going to say, "Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if I actually have given my full loyalty to God. Like, what do you mean by that?" And it could spark an actual conversation that could lead them somewhere, as opposed to, "Do you believe in Jesus?" And a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I believe in Him," and they'll just keep walking right past you. Um, but anyway, I'll kind of wrap it up there as this comes to the nearly 40 minutes. But just this is something that I've been thinking about, and kind of wanted to get back into the making videos earlier in the new year, but had kind of a flu issue and some other things. And I was like, well, I haven't really. At the end of last year, it just got kind of busy with Christmas and all those things. So I was like, oh, I'll start in January, and it's coming towards the end of January, and I just really wanted to start back in January to really start making videos. So this is the first one back in the new year. And the plan is to keep making more, hopefully at least weekly, if not every couple of days. But this was just the one I wanted to come back to and start with, because it's really been on my mind for a long time of what does it mean to believe in Jesus? Because for most of my life, I've said that I believe in Jesus. And it's like, what did I mean when I said that? Did I mean I was loyal to Him? And I'd like to think that the answer is yes. Peter talks about working through your salvation. And I think that's part of why you work through it, because the loyalty is a choice, right? Loyalty is a choice um, that you make. And we'll get into how much free will we have and all those things maybe in another video. Talk about Calvinism, Arminianism, because I disagree with both of those to some extent. So we'll get into that. That will be an interesting video maybe. But fundamentally, I wanted to kind of just have this be the thing. What is belief? Because that's kind of foundational to everything. If you don't believe in Jesus, then, there's no salvation. If you do believe in Jesus, though, what does that mean? What does it mean to believe? And I think loyalty. I think we need to start thinking about it in those terms, even saying it in those terms. So I'll wrap it up here. Hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions or disagreements or anything like that. Just please be respectful. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. I'm going to be getting back into it. Going to be making videos more again. So have a good one. I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.